Most people realize that the Walt Disney Company has gone political, but, well, many people don't understand why, and they cannot pinpoint exactly when that happened. Today, we can do so. We can do so because independent journalist Christopher Rufo has leaked out yet another video, this time of Bob Iger, and this time of the moment when Disney decided politics was a good idea. Hello folks, welcome back to the Pro Channel. We're happy to have each and every one of you out there. This is one video that we had not anticipated doing this evening. We had something else planned, but when the news happens, we are here, especially when it is entertainment news, and now this is Disney news. We have a tweet here from Christopher Rufo. He, of course, famous for managing to get so many of those videos out about Reimagine Tomorrow, and we congratulate him on continuing to do a good job of leaking out these videos from the Walt Disney Company. Now, we here on this channel, we attempt to get leaks and sources and all that sort of thing, and so we've done quite a job of that. But again, folks, Christopher Rufo, when it comes to this particular area, there's nobody better, and we give him all the credit in the world for what he has managed to accomplish here. I want to go to this video. This is from Bob Iger. This is days after the situation at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., January of 2020. And this is Bob Iger giving a speech within the company. We're going to watch it. I'm going to pause it at certain points to clarify and to explain. You may also notice, folks, that we don't have another person on the panel with me right now. There's no guest to talk about this. That's because this stuff is so spicy that I feel more comfortable doing this on my own this time, so that we're very careful in our language. We want as many of you out there as possible to be able to agree with the assessment we're going to provide. So we're keeping this very clean. Here's the video. Again, we'll pause to explain as this goes.
Well, I mean, Bob has talked about this eloquently since he's become CEO. I'll say a couple of things about it. You know, we've tended to shy away from politics. And in doing so, I think we've shied away from talking about issues that aren't political at all.
Now, what this is that Bob Iger is about to make a category change within the company. And also, you're going to note that Bob Chapek, after Bob Iger had completely left the company, Bob Chapek, then CEO after Iger, Bob Chapek had someone named Jeff Morrell come in, and Jeff Morrell was an individual who is very moderate. And the effort was going to be to moderate the company, to moderate Disney, to pull it away from politics. Bob Iger, we believe, had pushed Disney into a political position as a result of Bob Iger having pondered in 2018 and 2019 running for president and running in the Democrat Party. And so he had pushed Disney to the left with programs such as Reimagine Tomorrow, Stories Matter, etc., in order to give himself credibility were he to run in the Democrat primaries. Now, Bob Iger, this is before he leaves completely, so Bob Chapek is the CEO, but in name only. Iger's still running the company, and Iger is making a claim here that in the past they have shied away from politics, but that's also caused them to shy away from particular topics that they should not. Now, that's probably because those items were political. But what Bob Iger is going to attempt to do now is to claim that those items should not be considered political anymore, even though the vast majority would probably perceive them to be specifically partisan and political.
Like the issues that we're talking about today. Because we believe in doing so, maybe it looks like we're taking a stand. Well, in that reality, we should be taking a stand.
You're going to notice that as he talks, you're going to find much of the language is very similar to when he put the Walt Disney Company into the position it did with the Florida situation. And you should also take note that in the Florida situation, that Disney was tossed out of court without even getting to trial, and that now the only things remaining in Florida are the lawsuits against Disney from people in Florida. That and an appeals that has very little chance of ever winning with Disney. Continuing on.
By the way, I take responsibility for this. I was CEO for 15 years. And so I manage the company's public-facing processes and how we were portraying ourselves. And I think that we have to be less cautious, as Bob, I think, was just alluding to, about such things and not be concerned. Like just commenting about what happened in Washington last week, that's not political on our.
Now, you'll notice that what Bob Iger is suggesting and what he's talking about there is the situation. We have to be very careful in how we describe this. The situation that happened during the transfer of power between one political administration and another in 2020 in January. I hope that is clarification. But what he's also describing there, folks, allow me for a moment to set aside everything political with that. I know many of you out there, you have your strong opinions about it. And you have a variety. Of all the folks listening right now, there's a spectrum of views regarding that day and what it means and how it happened. Let's all acknowledge that spectrum exists. Let's all acknowledge that there is a reality and that there's different opinion about it. And let's set all of it aside for a moment so that we can get to this. This is the greater point for Disney. When Bob Iger talks about the Walt Disney Company having made a statement about that situation, that is an extra financial kind of calculation. That is exterior to business interest. And unless you're just a hyper-partisan, you can understand that. It's a specifically political or current events kind of category of response. But it either has no bearing on your financial potency as a company, or it might have a negative impact if it's perceived as partisan. So what Iger's doing here is he's attempting to say, here's this category of this thing that has happened, and we've made a statement about it, which already is sort of outside of the financial interests of the company. And he's about to say, because we've done that with this, then all these other things should fall into that same category. Here's what he says.
Our part at all. We know that what we saw was fundamentally wrong and that it was rooted in hatred and disrespect and contempt and intolerance. And we should feel free as a company to comment about that.
Now, again, I just want to pause here for a moment to say that as individuals, you should be able to comment on anything. But as companies, you have a fiduciary responsibility. And part of that fiduciary responsibility is to be very careful in the things you say and the topics in which you inject the company into. When you're looking at a company like the Walt Disney Company that handles family entertainment largely, that's going away, by the way. This push now into gambling as a central part of the Disney Company's financial interest really is eradicating that idea of Disney being a family entertainment company. You can't have 1/3 of your company be sports, and in that, integral to it now is going to be this gambling side. It's very hard for that to continue to be a family entertainment company. Whatever you might think of that, I'm not making any kind of moral statement about that. It's just a tactical recognition that we're making here. But all of that said, there are things that companies need to weigh in on, and there are things that have no real impact on the company or negative impact. They're superfluous to the company's goals of making money for shareholders. I'll leave it at that, and you ponder that.
Without retribution. And another thing I want to say that I've learned these last 9 to 12 months is, I'm very proud of a lot of the work we've done in terms of diversity and inclusion on screen. When we did Kocho, for instance, at Pixar, a great example of that, or Tiana, or of course, Black Panther is one of the great examples of that. I allowed those things to make me feel a bit complacent in a sense. It's not that I wanted to be that way, but I thought, wow, we did Black Panther. How great are we?
Folks, this is what you've heard of the humble brag. This is what I call the sin brag method. Of course, a humble brag is when you say something as if you're being pious, but you really want people to think highly of yourself. The sin brag is when you put out that you've done these great things, but that you admit that you were prideful, and the pridefulness stopped you from going even farther. And it just so happens that going farther is the thing you want to do. It's a way of shadowing what you did as great and praiseworthy, and yet still not enough, and all because you want to go farther. And so that's sort of the play that's happening here. It's a very interesting strategy from Iger. And I also want to note, did you notice that there was no segue? Did you notice that we go from the events regarding the nation's capital to contrasting that with inclusivity, doctrines, and policies and principles at the company? In doing so, it feels like Iger is contrasting those two sides as being against each other. And in that way, this feels partisan. And it feels very much like Iger is that he is taking the side of Disney being an explicitly partisan company. And I don't know how you can be an explicitly partisan company without alienating half of the audience. So while many people have different views about that particular day that is in question, it's not that apparent to me that you can broaden that out as being a contrast against what you've been doing with inclusivity without people saying, "No, wait a minute. Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about that one particular event, or are we talking about the two sides of the political spectrum?"
And it caused me to not focus as much as I should have on the culture of the company and the environment and in the voices that were telling those stories as opposed to just how they were being portrayed on the screen.
So we know what happened as a result of this. We all remember that Bob Iger, that there was a shadow campaign to take out Bob Chapek. We all remember the people protesting from the studios out on the concrete with their signs. We all remember the photos. We all remember, too, that when Bob Iger came back into power and the company was not moderated as official policy, which, by the way, was just weeks away when those protests broke out, we all remember that when Bob Iger came back into power, that what actually happened, what we're watching happen now with this story recently that Disney is now outsourcing to Canada with their Disney animation, as we remember back last year that Disney cut 7,000 jobs while increasing Bob Iger's salary. Bob Iger didn't come in and fix things. He just outsourced away and he just fired people. The company and its makeup is very different now. In fact, I would say that the company is hyper partisan. And it's this Reimagine Tomorrow website that we're looking at right now that I think Bob Iger was speaking to, and which now has completely altered the formula behind how this company works. You can see at Disney, inclusion is for everyone. But if we go down here and we eliminate just one search term, you'll see that here are the search terms it recommends: Asian and Pacific Islander representation, Black representation, gender diversity, female empowerment, alphabet representation, representation of people with disabilities, immigrant and refugee representation, authentic stories, indigenous representation, multicultural communities, Latinx, which is offensive to many Spanish speakers, representation, age diversity, religious diversity, diverse families, veteran representation, communities with socioeconomic diversity, Middle Eastern representation, emerging voices. These, if you fall into one of those categories, then it's for everyone. Or perhaps it's just for Bob Iger, because Bob Iger gets bigger yachts and bigger salaries. And although the hiring process changes at Disney, and although the company is now political, definitely political, people lose their jobs, 7,000. And the animation gets outsourced elsewhere. Because it turns out that changing the company from being something that was based on meritocracy to something based on category quotas of people arbitrarily determined by Disney, that doesn't create great places for creativity. And as a result, Disney has suffered. Wall Street has not yet caught up with Main Street, but Main Street has rejected Disney at the box office. The numbers of subscribers for Disney Plus have either fallen or stagnated. Meanwhile, other streaming services have not had such things occur. The company cannot seem to get a win, except when it comes to profit margins, which seem to have excited investors, and that happened in the same quarter that Disney could not create anything because of the Hollywood strikes, and thereby the money situation was such Disney didn't have to spend. It will be interesting to see what happens with the Nelson Peltz situation, the try-and proxy. I have my doubt that it will succeed this year, but next year is a completely different story. And this year, I think, could be an absolute just wreckage for the Walt Disney Company. We continue to hope for a turnaround, but clearly this company has fallen into a political position brought about by the CEO of it. Now, folks, we broke up that video the first time because you came here for analysis. You can watch this video on your own. For purposes of giving you this video without any commentary now, we'll play it one last time, and then we'll call it a day. But this, of course, breaking, and we'll have analysis going forward. I want to tell you that this leaked video may have a major impact on the Gina Carano situation. We plan to cover that tomorrow. But again, here's Iger without any breaks, without any interruptions.
Well, I mean, Bob has talked about this eloquently since he's become CEO. I'll say a couple of things about it. You know, we've tended to shy away from politics. And in doing so, I think we've shied away from talking about issues that aren't political at all, like the issues that we're talking about today. Because we believe in doing so, maybe it looks like we're taking a stand. Well, in that reality, we should be taking a stand. By the way, I take responsibility for this. I was CEO for 15 years. And so I manage the company's public-facing processes and how we were portraying ourselves. And I think that we have to be less cautious, as Bob, I think, was just alluding to, about such things and not be concerned, like just commenting about what happened in Washington last week. That's not political on our part at all. We know that what we saw was fundamentally wrong and that it was rooted in hatred and disrespect and contempt and intolerance. And we should feel free as a company to comment about that without retribution. And another thing I want to say that I've learned these last 9 to 12 months is, I'm very proud of a lot of the work we've done in terms of diversity and inclusion on screen. When we did Kocho, for instance, at Pixar, a great example of that, or Tiana, or of course, Black Panther is one of the great examples of that. I allowed those things to make me feel a bit complacent in a sense. It's not that I wanted to be that way, but I thought, wow, we did Black Panther. How great are we? And it caused me to not focus as much as I should have on the culture of the company and the environment and in the voices that were telling those stories as opposed to just how they were being portrayed on the screen.
Folks, again, this may have major implications on the Gina Carano lawsuit. We'll be talking about that and explaining it tomorrow, we hope. Look forward to bringing you that information. If you've not yet looked at the video where we talk about the National Geographic situation and Disney Plus, please, folks, go check that video out. It has great importance. We fundamentally believe you should be watching it. We believe that one needs attention, not because of this channel, but because of the implications for innocent people. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button. Share, subscribe. When you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And yes, we do have a 60,000 subscriber celebration coming up this Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss out. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
It's like, I love Disney's content. I grew up watching, all of the classics. They have been a huge, informative part of my life. But at the same time, I worked at small studios most of my career, and I'd heard, you hear whispers. I'd heard things like, oh, they won't let you show this at a Disney show. And I'm like, okay. So I was a little sus when I started. But then my experience was bafflingly the opposite of what I had heard on my little pocket of Proud Family Disney TVA. The showrunners were super welcoming. Meredith Roberts and our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. And so I feel I felt it was, maybe it was that way in the past, but I guess something must have happened in the last they're turning it around, they're going hard. And then all that momentum that I felt, that sense of I don't have to be afraid to let's have these two characters kiss. Let's in the background. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to if you see anything queer in the show, proud family. But like, I just was like, no one would stop me, and no one was trying to stop me.
This is Wilton the Troll reporting for That's Park Place, and I'm surrounded by loving and adoring people who are peacefully trying to make sure that poor kids aren't cold in the winter. And just behind me, you can see a totally natural bonfire for baking cookies or making marshmallows.
Yeah, so, Wilson, we're really appreciate the effort and stuff, but we're looking for real and, accurate news reporting on that Park Place.
So not like most news outlets, huh?
No.